Hi everyone, this is Stan, your favorite Polish Taiwan YouTuber. Hope you're all having a great day. Welcome to today's show. Today let's talk about the sinicization of religion that is going on in China. Everyone knows that in the People's Republic of China there is not only no religious freedom, but in fact it is hard to find any religion unaffected by the CCP. The clergy in any church, imams in mosques, or Buddhist or Tao leaders in shrines and temples must first undergo screening by the CCP before they can preach in those religious places. Moreover, the content of their preaching must simultaneously promote the CCP, praise the CCP, and express gratitude towards the CCP. I believe that many viewers of my channel have seen some peculiar videos from China, such as Buddhist monks and Catholic priests singing and dancing to the songs praising the CCP in religious settings. In the CCP around China, you're only allowed to believe in the Chinese Communist Party, and the CCP never hide their intention to make all religions within China compliant with the communist ideology. In fact, anyone who searches on Google or Baidu for sinicization of religion can easily find a lot of speeches by the Chinese Communist Party officials and Xi Jinping personally throughout the years advocating for the religions to become sinicized or adjacent to the Communist Party. For example, in May 2015, Xi Jinping mentioned at the Central United Front Work Conference, we must use the socialist core values to guide and infiltrate various religions in our country with the Chinese culture, support the religious community in interpreting religious thoughts, rules and doctrines in line with the requirements of the times, as well as firmly guard against the Western ideological infiltration and consciously resist the influence of extremist ideologists. In this short statement, various conflicting points are present, right? On the one hand, there is a need to guard against the so-called Western ideological infiltration, which suggests religious sinicization as a solution. But isn't communism invented by Karl Marx in Germany? Can the Chinese Communist Party be considered the biggest Western ideological infiltration agent in China? Could it be the largest cult imported from the West into China? Even if you take some time to search on the Chinese internet things like believing in Marxism, you can find a lot of official Chinese communist propaganda and books promoting Marxism as a religious belief. For example, there is an article that mentions loyalty stems from belief, and belief forges loyalty. Without belief, loyalty is like a tree without roots, water without a source. Remaining unwaveringly loyal to the party, following the party's lead, is the persistent pursuit of a high belief. We must educate and guide our officers and soldiers, that's very important, to further strengthen their belief in Marxism. The faith in Chinese socialism with distinctive features and their confidence in realizing the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. The Chinese dream. They should consciously become the firm believers and faithful practitioners of the great ideals of communism and the common ideals of socialism with Chinese characteristics. Therefore, we can conclude that the so-called sinicization of religion by the Chinese Communist Party is in fact the Communist Partyization of religion. Talking about the United Front work and infiltration in the religious sphere, there is another piece of evidence that can support this claim. The State Administration for Religious Affairs in China has always been directly subordinate to the United Front Work Department of the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee. Therefore, religious groups are also considered enemies by the CCP and targets of United Front Work. So, in reality, the CCP's talk of the sinicization of religion and making religion more suited to the locals is deceptive. Actually, their actions aim to eliminate doctrines and eradicate anything that's left of the religion. And since the CCP considers religions targets for elimination, it undoubtedly has a set of plans to eradicate each religion. For example, in January 2021, Beijing held a seminar on the 5-year outline for adhering to sinicizing of Islam in China in 2018-2022. At that time, senior officials responsible for religious affairs in the United Front Work Department declared during the conference that there is a need to adhere to the truthful direction of sinicization of Islam in China, and emphasized the importance of maintaining a political stance, expressing loyalty to the party, and following the party's lead. The president of the Islamic Association of China also stated, adhering to the direction of sinicization of religion is the correct guidance given to us by the party Central Committee, and is the path that must be taken for the healthy development of Islam in our country. It is also known that the so-called president of the Islamic Association of China is a representative arranged by the Chinese Communist Party. This conveys the message to Muslim people that Allah also has to obey the CCP's orders. Essentially, it distorts the teachings of Islam. Because, according to the belief system of Islam, the teachings are considered revelations from Allah, or God, transmitted to his followers through the Prophet Muhammad. From the Islamic perspective, these teachings are eternal and unchangeable, and they serve as sacred guiding principles that direct people's behavior and beliefs in the world. The Quran is also considered the word of Allah. According to Surah 15, verse number 9 of the Quran, "Indeed, it is He who sent down the Quran, and indeed, we will be its guardian." Therefore, for Muslims, the content of the Quran is sacred and cannot be altered. Those who modify the teachings commit a grave offense. If Xi Jinping were to be judged by an Islamic court for blasphemy, it could potentially result in the death penalty, as blasphemy is a serious offense in Islam. So now I'm going to ask another question. What other capital offenses did Xi Jinping commit? One of them is the destruction of religious sites. For example, in May of this year, the Najiaying Mosque in Yunnan, which had a history of over 600 years, was deemed as a violation of building regulations by the Chinese Communist government under the pretext of sinicization of religion, because its architectural style was not considered fitting the Chinese traditions. This led to large-scale protests by local Muslims. Afterwards, the Chinese government even wanted them to turn themselves in at the police station. And in fact, from 2017 to the present, nearly tens of thousands of mosques in China with domes and minarets have been forcibly demolished or altered by the Chinese Communist government. This can be seen as a great humiliation to the Muslims and Islam. So I'm interested, what do you guys think about it? If everything should be sinicized, as they say in China, shouldn't it also apply to the CCP governmental buildings? How many buildings in China are actually built in the so-called Chinese style? Is the Great Hall of the People, a communist cult gathering place with 134 Roman or Greek columns in fusion with Western neoclassical and Soviet styles, the largest violation of sinicization policies within the Chinese communist regime? Is it considered a party property or state property, and shouldn't it be demolished then? And what about the private villas and mansions of high-ranking CCP officials? How many of them comply with the sinicized architectural style? It is quite awkward. There are so many Western-style buildings owned by the high-ranking officials, but the CCP only dismantles mosques and churches. Moreover, the CCP government also takes down the crosses from the Catholic and Protestant churches, even those with 100 years of history. They always come up with the various reasons for these demolitions. In addition to the aforementioned reason of not being in Chinese style, some churches are told to take down crosses as they can injure the people. Well, my country is a Catholic nation, and there is a church behind me right now, right? There are churches everywhere, and it's the first time I hear that crosses should be removed, not to endanger people. And do those architectural violations in the homes of the high-ranking officials lead to demolition within the same efficiency? I doubt it. By the way, they don't only demand the monks and priests to sing CCP praising songs and perform dances. The contents of the Bible, Quran, and Buddhist scriptures are all modified to align with the communist ideology. For example, Radio Free Asia once exposed the Chinese textbook, Professional Ethics and Law, which altered the New Testament. Originally, it depicted Jesus preventing the crowd from stoning the woman, right? Like the very famous phrase, "He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her." However, in that textbook, it was written that Jesus himself picked up a stone and killed the woman. Furthermore, which is also contradicting the Bible, the textbook claimed that Jesus said, "I too am a sinner." However, if the law can only be enforced by flawless individuals, the law will perish. And in the question and answer section of the book, readers are asked, based on this story, how do you view the law? In addition to the methods mentioned above, the CCP also employs very peculiar criteria to label local religious groups as illegal organizations. Subsequently, the Chinese government uses the excuse of lacking proper registration to dissolve these religious organizations and expel clergy members. There even have been reports from church believers and journalists from publications like Bitter Winter magazine, claiming that during local government meetings, there are propaganda sessions. During those propaganda sessions, you are told that the United States is the enemy of China, and Americans, they believe in Christianity. If the number of Chinese Christians becomes too large and their growth accelerates, it will be easier for them to interact with the foreigners, and they may join forces to oppose the country. Well, I think that the Communist Party is afraid that once Chinese people start believing in any religion, they will realize that the CCP is a cult. Great. After all, the CCP doesn't prohibit Chinese citizens from worshipping Mao Zedong in Mao temples, but it seeks to eradicate other religions. Of course, when the CCP is eradicating religions within China, they naturally want to avoid criticism from foreign religious groups. Therefore, they will try various ways to engage with the religious organizations abroad. Take the example of the Vatican's desire to establish relationships with China. The Vatican and the Pope primarily look into the future of Catholicism in China, and they believe that they can find a compromise with the authoritarian regime to protect the basic rights of Catholics. However, the Chinese government is well aware of the Vatican's intentions and exploits this fact. I believe this behavior is somewhat similar to the mistakes many countries have made in international relations, thinking that by engaging and communicating with the regime, it will change or treat you better. But appeasement only leads to a direct opposite outcome. Look at how Russia attacked Ukraine or how China is treating its opposition members. Both Chinese Protestants and Catholics face suppression, and the CCP sees engagement with the Vatican as a means to achieve their political objectives, such as applying more pressure to Taiwan by forcing the Vatican to reduce its interactions with the Taiwanese government or even sever diplomatic ties with Taiwan. In the end, it is the Chinese Catholics and the Vatican that are taken advantage of, while the CCP government benefits. Or the CCP uses diplomatic and economic means to try to influence certain Muslim-majority countries to avoid discussing the persecution of Uyghur Muslims in China. They also employ tactics to suppress Taiwan's international presence while engaging in external United Front work and bribery to demand that other countries adhere to the so-called One China principle and support China's position. From the perspective of sinicization of religion, we can once again see similar strategies applied. So, never believe in communist propaganda and stay strong. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please press like, subscribe and share. This is Stan. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!